In olden days, a glimpse of femur was only for morbid dreamers, but you're not alone. Bring anything bones. Two goofy gals with deathly interest go on a skeleton inquest in your headphones. Anything bones.
Hey everybody, welcome to Anything Bones. I'm Caitlin Hart.
And I'm Sophie Schwartz, and this is the show where we talk about bones and bone-adjacent topics.
Yeah, we talk about bones a lot just in passing with each other. So why not record it and share it with the world?
A formal conversation about bones between two friends who like to laugh and joke and goof.
But also be formal.
Yeah, but also be formal.
We're nothing if not formal.
Oh.
I think I wrote you a letter to start this podcast, right?
You did, and it was delivered by a man on a horse, a skeleton man at that.
Yeah, I wanted to make it special for us, so.
Yeah, he did say that you had paid for him to sing it to me, but I unfortunately declined because his terrifying fleshless jaw is making me uncomfortable.
Sorry about that. Anyway.
Welcome to our very first episode.
Yeah, we're excited to be doing this. We're in the middle of a pandemic, so why not record a podcast with your best friend?
The topics we'll be covering are all bone-related in nature.
Yeah, we're bone girls.
We're bone women.
Oh God, excuse me.
You're we're bone women.
This is going great so far.
All of my bones have fused together. I no longer have 270. Now I have 206. I'm a class adult. Yeah.
I like how you threw that in there. Little fact.
Little bone dust.
Yeah.
We can call it.
Write that down.
All right. We got it. But I think the point of the podcast is just going to be sharing bone-related stories and facts with each other to pass the time.
To pass the time, and we're also both comedians, so we're going to be able to put our own little spin on things, and hopefully it'll be entertaining.
Yeah, and in all our jest, we always do it with respect. We respect human remains and the cultures that they come from. And none of this is to demean bones in any way, unless we're talking about a particularly bad episode of the television show Bones.
Yes, the very successful Fox television show Bones, which will also be covered because we're both boneheads.
We're big boneheads.
Boneheaded women, I guess. Scratch that.
No, I like it. I'm here. My head is hard. I'm a fully grown woman, and I'm interested in bones.
Yeah, and I fully agree with what you're saying with being respectful of bones and not, using comedy as a way to make fun of people that have died or come before us, because we have a lot of respect for that. And also, I just want to point out that we are not experts in any way.
Oh, no.
Neither of us went to school for anything really. I mean, I went to school for psychology, but that's not science.
It is, but
yeah, but you know what I mean? We didn't study archaeology or anything like that. Yeah, we're just two people who like to do research and like to talk to each other and are interested in this topic. So why not?
So let's get down to it. Who should go first?
We did not discuss this. I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't mind going first if you want.
Yeah.
If we're going alphabetically or something.
Well, if we always go alphabetically, you'll always go first.
Yeah, we're going to go back and forth. We'll figure out how this works. But just for episode 1, I guess we could go alphabetical.
I like it. And then the next episode, we can go reverse alphabetical.
Yes, please. So I am Katelyn, and I'm going to be talking about the Lindow Man,
Ooh.
AKA Lindow 2.
Not Lindow 1.
No, there is a Lindow 1, but I'm talking about Lindow 2 on this episode of our podcast, at least. And the Lindow Man was an important archaeological find. Oop, can't mess that word up. And he was discovered on August 1st, 1984, at Lindow Moss, which is a peat bog in a county called Cheshire in northwest England. Okay.
Did you ever get up around there?
No, I've never been. I don't think I've ever been to Cheshire. Have you?
No, but I did see some peat bogs when I was in Ireland. And
well, then I have a great story for you.
Yeah, bring on the peat.
The next thing I wrote, what's a bog?
I mean, isn't that the question of life?
Did you know that another word for bog is quagmire, according to the internet?
Huh.
We've been saying that word before because it's a funny word, but it's also a bog, I guess. And a bog is a type of wetland where peat accumulates. And I had more questions when I read this because I was like, what is peat? Like, I'm sorry, I don't know what peat is.
I'm sorry, excuse me, who is Pete?
Yeah. Who is Pete? Where did he come from? But why does he have so many bogs?
I'm sorry, Pete. You have far too many bogs. I've got to have more questions, man.
Yeah. So Pete is, quote, an accumulation, this is just from like dictionary.com, like I Googled like what is peat, quote, an accumulation of partially decayed vegetation or organic matter. And often this organic matter is moss. So bogs are very unique in their ability to preserve human bodies and probably other stuff. But because it's an anaerobic environment, no oxygen, these bodies basically are tanned by all of the like ingredients in a bog.
Oh.
Yeah.
So cool.
It's fascinating, it's cool, but it's a little bit it is horrifying. Like, so the Lindow Man was discovered again in 1984 by commercial peat cutters. And just for a second, I want to like go back to that day, and I would love to see the discovery of that. Like, I would, you're just doing your job. Like, peat's used for fuel, and it's used in agriculture, and it's used in some spa treatments. So you're just like getting peat for those purposes, and then you find a partial human skeleton. Like, what's going on?
I mean, I think you're digging in the peat and you go, oh, there he is. We found Pete.
I mean, do you ask for a raise at that point? Are you like, look, this is crazy, I need more money? Or do you just say like, oh, wow, what a thing that happened to me?
I mean, maybe it's more common than we think. Maybe they were just kind of hoeing around in the peat and they were like, oop, George, we need the special wheelbarrow. We got another one.
You know, it's, yeah.
Make sure to shake all that good peat off of them.
Jesus. Okay. So that's all kind of the bog stuff and me thinking about what it would be like to find a body in a bog, which I don't know if I'd ever be ready for.
No.
So back to the Lindow Man. Radiocarbon dating put his death between 2 BC and 119 AD.
2?
That's 2. Just one number. 2.
Oh, when were you born? 2.
So obviously, this is a very, very old skeleton. So only the upper portion of the Lindow Man's body was found. And they later found part of a leg of about 15 meters, which, you know, is a little distance from away. I don't know exactly because meters are a mystery.
There's no way to know how many meters would, say, be in a yard or a foot.
There is a way, but I didn't look it up. I should also point out that a lot of this information came from 2 places: Wikipedia, which is number 1 in my book, and the website for the British Museum.
Oh.
So meters, obviously, that was from the British Museum because they like it. They like meters there. So they found this leg a little ways away from where the Lindow Man's upper portion was found. So they think, it's possible that it's his leg. No one knows for sure.
It's somebody else's.
I mean, it turns out there are a lot of bodies in bogs, but I don't want to spoil everything.
Okay, got it.
Shit, I just did.
Shut up about the bodies in the bog.
So the Lindow Man was about 25 when he died. He's a little bit younger than us. It's very sad. Quote from the British Museum website: "He was well groomed with trimmed beard and filed fingernails."
Filed fingernails?
Yeah, he took care of himself, or somebody took care of him before he died. Again, a quote from the British Museum: "His hair and skin was well preserved. Remains of a fur armband was around left arm, and a garrote of animal sinew around the neck."
What?
Yeah. So, a garrote, I was like, are the British using garrote in a way that is unfamiliar to me? What? I was like, I had to Google what's a garrote, even though I know it's used for strangling people. And that's the only, we have the same definition in America and Britain.
Cravat. Oh no, we meant to write cravat.
Yeah.
Oh, what a nice necktie.
Okay. So let's get to some more kind of juicy stuff.
Ooh.
So there's some debate over how the Lindow Man died. And that's because he definitely died a very violent death. And some people think it was actually ritualistic. So he had the last thing he ate was burnt bread. They somehow know that the bread was burnt. And there was also mistletoe pollen in his stomach. And I don't know what that is. It can't be good though.
Mistletoe is a plant, and it's a plant.
Right. I mean, yeah, I know it's a plant, but I don't know if that's a poison or who knows. I could have looked it up, but I didn't. So here's how he died, or here are some of the injuries that were inflicted. He was strangled, hit on the head, and his throat was cut. Now, given sort of the time period that he was found in, which was around the time of the Roman conquest of Britain during the Iron Age, a little bit before that, the Romans had outlawed human sacrifice, but we don't know his exact date of death, so we don't know if this was before that or because he definitely was. He didn't need to be killed so many different ways. One of those things would have probably been enough. So all this overkill is very confusing.
They really hated him. They were like,
yeah. So some people think it could be human sacrifice. He could also have been the victim of a robbery or a crime, some kind of crime, or he could have been a criminal and this was his punishment, or did something. Who knows? It's unknowable. But it's led to a lot of speculation because it was a pretty important discovery. And according to Wikipedia, Lindow Man is the first discovery, this is a quote, "the first discovery in Britain of a well-preserved bog body." So there was a Lindow one, but I don't think it was as much of a human as the Lindow Man, which was a full upper torso, and his skin was intact. There was an armband and this garrote around his neck, which I read somewhere that it could have been ornamental, or it could have been the thing that another thing that they used to try to kill him. But so because of this find, the story was super huge. It was the 80s. And it created the story went viral, as it were, and created a lot of interest in looking for more bog bodies, which they did find. There are just a lot of bodies in bogs, it turns out. And not just bogs in Britain, just bogs, because of the way that they're able to preserve bodies. They are, yeah, there are people down there who didn't get a proper burial. The last sort of thing, if we weren't in a pandemic and we could just jet over to London, we could go see the Lindow Man at the British Museum, which is why I got so much information from their website, is because he was freeze dried, which is also horrifying. But
they freeze dried him?
They did, yeah, because they wanted to preserve him, and I guess like there was when he was taken out of the peat, it was like, oh, he's not gonna, he's gonna disintegrate like without the peat. So they had to figure out a way to preserve him, and so it's more complicated than just freeze drying him, like obviously,
yeah.
But that's the gist of it, and so. I did go to the British Museum and I don't remember seeing him there, but he is apparently there. And I can't remember where this was exactly, but I think it brought up a question for me of like when we display a human in a museum, like, are we giving reverence to that person, or are we kind of, are we like exploiting this person's death? Like Lindow Man was alive a long ass time ago, but he's still a person. So I don't have like a hard opinion either way. I just was like, oh, that's something to think about.
Yeah, that's the real interesting debate, is like after a museum or like a research site has extracted as much info as they can from what is essentially a corpse.
Mm-hmm.
Should they rebury it or should it remain on display? And like, this is a topic for another
certainly episode. Yeah but, I didn't mean to like open up a can.
No. I love talking about this and about repatriation and about like what are the rights of ancient remains, because that's a really interesting question. And you come up against it with a lot of like medical specimens as well. Like in earlier times of museum practices and colonialism, there was a lot of, taking stuff that shouldn't be there and without the consent of the remains or the culture of the remains.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so you're wondering about that is exactly spot on. Like,
great. Oh, wow.
Like we'll do many episodes that do.
Yeah, that's just, I think that we've just begun to scrape the surface of that, especially given the topic that we're going to discuss. Like, we're going to be discussing people that their remains have not been treated the way like I would want my remains to be treated. That's my story of the Lindow Man and his sad, violent, horrible death and, his discovery.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one really cool part to look on the bright side is that, even though he died a violent death, he kind of has a second life as this really important tool in understanding humanity.
Yeah, exactly. And like furthering the research into other bodies that have now been discovered in bogs. I'd like to go to a bog sometime soon, when things settle down and I feel safe to get on a plane.
As soon as bogs are accessible by us.
Let's take a big bog road trip.
Ooh, bog party, who's coming? Let's just find a leg.
Anyway, I want to hear what you did research on.
Ooh. Well, I would like to open up my topic by asking you a question.
Okay. Off the cuff. Okay.
Off the cuff. No wrong answers, kind of. But how do they bury people in Venice, Italy?
Oh, God. I mean, I would assume, well, so a cemetery, but there's water everywhere. Sea burial? Buried at sea?
You were closest, kind of at the top of your guessing. We're going to talk about Isola di San Michele, the island cemetery of Venice.
Oh my God. Okay.
So I'm going to rattle off my sources at the top because I have a lot of them. In the future, I'd love to be more diligent about pairing exact chunks of information with the good sources, but I have all the sources here at the top, so I'm just going to rattle them off. We got the Venice Insider, Wikipedia, our best friend, Cult of the Weird, which special shout out to that article because I got a lot of great info from that one. Seductive Venice, Consocrizia.it. There's going to be a lot of Italian words that I don't know how to say.
Sorry, Seductive Venice?
Yeah, Seductive Venice. It's like it's kind of a travel website / like a kind of a blog about Venice.
Okay, cool.
Venice is sexy.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. Have you been there?
No. But I would really like to go.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Have you?
In high school, yeah, I did go.
Oh, very jealous. But you did not go to the cemetery.
No, definitely not. I was there for like 2 or 3 days.
I'm just going to finish this really quick.
Please, God.
Veneto, Inside, New York Times, Venice Blog, and an article off The Guardian. So those are all of my sources, and when we put them up, maybe we'll put them all in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely.
So first off, just a little bit of how I came across this topic. I was researching another topic, and then I saw the words Island Cemetery, and I was like, yes, I'm there. Please take me. A little bit about Venice, just as some background information.
Yeah.
So the city of Venice has 26 miles of weaving canals and waterways, and it's situated among 118 islands in a shallow lagoon in northern Italy. I do want to share some of Venice's great nicknames with you.
Okay.
So, La Dominante, La Serenisima, Queen of the Adriatic, City of Water, City of Masks, City of Bridges, The Floating City, and City of Canals.
Whoa.
And there are over
so many types of cities that Venice is.
People love Venice. People go crazy over Venice, and I don't blame them because it's a beautiful, beautiful place. But so the founding of Venice is kind of wrapped up in a lot of kind of myth, and there's no kind of like concrete historical record of how people started kind of congregating in the Venice area, but historians kind of agree that it was mostly refugees from the fallen Roman Empire at the time and sort of barbarian and Germanic and Hun raids that were going on in the adjoining areas. So they retreated to this lagoon where they started setting up temporary settlements on these islands. And then in the 5th century, they kind of started using what they would do to kind of build up on these islands that were very kind of unstable is that they would drive wooden stakes into the ground and then build a wooden platform over that and then do like stone and soil and kind of wood and kind of build up the land. So you can probably tell that's not great for burying people.
I couldn't imagine how you could make that work.
Well, the kind of tricky thing about it is that Catholicism has been a big influence there for a very long time, and they're not huge fans of cremation. So people in that area tend to favor burial. So they were kind of in a bit of a pinch because of the land. And so they would bury people in these little Campilio Novo de Morte, which were
great.
Thank you. Which were these like fields of death, which were like these little burial sites throughout the city that were sometimes like under paving stones and in like kind of corners of streets. So they were kind of burying people a little bit everywhere that they could.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be hard to keep up with, and also that sounds awful.
And during the plague times there were a lot of these little sites around the city where they would have to do mass graves of bodies because they just there was nowhere to kind of put them, and plopping them in the water is not a good idea.
Don't do that.
No, don't do that.
The thing I remember about Venice was that it just it just was so like hot, but because it was hot and because of all the water, it just had that fish smell, like fishy, like ocean, water smell. And it was a little overwhelming.
Yeah. And can you imagine that plus like medieval kind of hygiene?
Oh God, no. Like, like I was sweating and this is pretty current. So like,
yeah. So there you go. Yeah, ouch indeed. Well, they kind of got a solution to their problem actually in 1804 when Napoleon invaded. And he was like,
thank you, Napoleon.
Yeah, right? He was like, no, we can't do this. This is not hygienic. What are you doing? Get those bodies out of here. We're putting them somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And so they designated this island, San Michel, as the cemetery island. And it was actually already a place of worship. There was a church there. Actually, in 1469, the first Renaissance church in Venice, church/monastery, was constructed on the island. So they decided that would be their funereal island. But kind of concurrent to that, there was actually a Jewish cemetery on a different island called Lindow that was burying people since the 1300s, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. And they're pretty close together.
Kind of. I didn't exactly look at where a map is, but the cemetery island that I'm talking about is pretty out of the way from Venice. Like you can take like a water taxi boat there, but it's not like close. So I want to talk a little bit about the cemetery itself. So when it first began, it was just the one island, but then they needed a lot more space because they were starting to take people from other burial sites and bring them over. So they actually filled in between 1835 and 1839. They actually filled in the space between San Michel and another island called San Cristoforo delle Pace.
It just kept going. Cool.
It just kept going. So long these words are. The Italians, they're beautiful with their language, but
we can't speak Italian.
We can't speak Italian.
I would like to.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about this cemetery was that for a really long time in the 1800s and early 1900s, it was only kind of a temporary resting place, because people needed to pay these like maintenance fees for the upkeep of the monastery and of the cemetery. So if you didn't pay those maintenance fees after 12 years, you were actually disinterred and sent to a different island. And
the naughty island.
Oh, the naughty island was super interesting to me. And it was hard to find a lot of information about this naughty island called Saint Adriano, maybe?
I bet. It's fine.
I mean, in English, it's known as the Island of Bones. So we'll just go ahead and call it that.
Why don't we just go with that? Yeah.
Why don't we just go ahead and call it that? So this island became an ossuario, a repository for bones that were occasionally removed from Venice's main cemetery on the island of San Michel and from various fields of the dead that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
What I thought was really interesting about this was that there were a lot of websites in Italian about it, but they were hard to translate. But there's a lot of rumors that if you're walking around on this island, which is like hard to get to, and they won't really let you on it. I read a blog post about someone who tried to have a picnic there and was quickly shooed away.
Oh my God.
But they say if you're like
a picnic on the Island of Bones.
On the Island of Bones.
It's I get it. It sounds cool, but it's also like disrespectful. I don't know, like have a picnic on the boat, like viewing the Island of Bones. Like, why do you need to be on it?
Well, I think because they wanted to confirm this rumor that when you're walking around, you can find bones in the underbrush and that there's bones, like piles of bones just hanging.
Oh, okay. Sounds romantic.
Yeah, I mean, great place for a date.
Ugh.
I mean, maybe if you're going on a date with one of us, but we'd probably
turn down the boat. Yeah.
We don't want to eat on top of the bones? No.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So I want to tell you about some interesting people who are buried in this cemetery.
Yes.
Because it's actually a fairly international cemetery. There's a lot of Russian people, French people, English people, Scottish people, and even a couple of Americans are buried there.
Huh.
Yeah. Some people of note. I'm going to do the longest name first. So don't jump in until I'm absolutely done with this name.
I'm silent.
You're silent. And this is a story I got off of Venice Insider. Thank you so much. All right. This is Princess Katerina Petrova Trobetovsky Nemuslin Puchinkin. I'm done.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we'll call her.
That is a mouthful.
Yeah.
I hope she had a nickname.
Well, we'll call her Princess Catherine for now.
Perfect.
But she was the daughter of a lieutenant general in the Russian army, and she was a mistress to the Russian Tsar Nicholas I. She got pregnant with his baby, and he didn't really want the scandal, so he had her actually marry somebody else. This guy named Sergei Trobenskatoy. I don't know. My Russian is terrible.
No, that's fine.
And he was a cornet of the cavalry regiment, whatever that means.
Yeah, and more power to him. I'm sorry. The Tsar was like, I don't want anyone to know that we doinked. So you have to marry. Like, I wonder if the Tsar chose who she married, or was just like, you have to get married right now.
I don't know. I think he had to pull a switcheroo. He had 9 months.
Yeah, obviously there's a turnaround. Like, you need to. I feel that's so sad.
Yeah. Well, she had a good rest of her life. She had her daughter. She moved to France, and then she moved to Venice, had another daughter, and both of her daughters and her husband are buried with her at this cemetery.
Okay. So let's imagine that she was just with the Tsar, like just to be with the Tsar, and it was like all. Let's say that she had the power, and I feel good about it.
All right. Yeah. Let's say she definitely chose all of the decisions in her life.
That's what I want for her. That's what I hope happened.
That's what I hope happened. But
naively.
This next one is pretty fun. We got Igor Stravinsky, the famous composer.
Yeah.
Whose music you would probably recognize. He's composed a lot of ballets. He's composed music for films. One thing that connects him to the other person we just talked about is that he's buried next to his wife, who used to be his mistress.
Oh.
There's a lot of mistresses in here.
Okay, yeah.
Well, his first wife was his cousin and died of tuberculosis. So,
oh, God.
There you go.
Rough. Just there's so many rough discussions. I'm gonna have to stop reacting to every single one thing that's having a discussion about every bad thing that we tell each other. We're never gonna get through this podcast because a lot of it's bad.
I mean, not bad, maybe a little grim.
Grim, yeah, that's a better word. Yeah, let's go with grim.
Grim. I mean, the last one's really fun.
Okay.
This one's Christian Doppler.
Hi, Christian.
Do you know why Christian is important?
No.
Because he's the inventor of the Doppler effect.
Can you say more?
Okay, so he was an Austrian mathematician and physicist. He is celebrated for his principle known as the Doppler effect, that the observed frequency of a wave depends on the relative speed of the source and the observer. You know, the train thing, where it's woo, the train thing.
I'll take your word for it.
The train thing.
Yeah.
And, I did my thorough research, and Katelyn, I have to tell you.
Okay.
This man did not have a mistress.
Wow.
I know. I thought
Seems like he might be one of the few.
Yeah. I mean, well, I was all excited. I was like, oh, fuck yeah. All these people are mistress adjacent. That's my through thread.
Yeah. What's my through thread here?
What's my through thread? Through line, through thread, whatever. I have a lot of other fun facts about the cemetery, but kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about was when I was researching all of this, and we talked a little bit about this at the top of the topic, that what about like cremating people? Like, why didn't they just cremate people?
Mm-hmm.
And we already talked about Catholicism kind of being one of the main factors in that. But I found an article from The Guardian in 2010 that said that they are now allowing in certain areas for people's ashes to be scattered in the lagoon.
It seems like that should be allowed.
Yeah, but I did find this really wild quote that I want to read you from it.
This is from The Guardian?
This is from The Guardian, yeah. And this is talking about the new regulation that they put in place. It says, the council regulation also permits locals to keep ashes at home on the mantelpiece for the first time. Bedin said the rules were based on a new national law. We are the first big city to put them into effect, he said. Understandably, we have a real problem with space for the deceased here. For the first time, people are allowed to put ashes on their mantelpiece. What?
That in 2010?
2010.
10 years ago.
Well, you gotta believe people are doing it. Were doing it before then, right? Like, because I mean, the cemetery that I was telling you about, this island cemetery, is pretty big. It has like 80,000 plots or something like that. Like, it's pretty big. And like they move people in and out of it. But like you would think that there would still be a large amount of people who would keep cremated remains at home, right?
Seems like a thing that you do. That's something that people have done in my family where like a spouse dies before my aunt, her husband died and she wants to keep his ashes until she dies so they can be scattered together. I think that's really beautiful. Respect people's wishes for what they want to do after they die.
I mean, I think that's going to be a big theme in our podcast is
respect.
Respect the bones.
Please respect the bones. If you take nothing else away from this.
That's pretty much everything that I've got. Oh, one last thing though. I did want to tell you about the funeral gondolas.
Oh yes, I do want to hear about the funeral gondolas.
Yeah. The funeral gondolas were amazing, like how they would transport people's bodies to the island. I'll read you this quote. We'll end with this.
Okay.
My section. And this is a quote originally from an 1879 issue of American Magazine, but I got it from an article by Charlie Hines called Death and Burial in Venice, What Does the Floating City Do with Its Dead? And I highly recommend that article if you want more info on this, because it's fascinating. It has pictures. Here's the quote for you. In Venice, the city of the sea, the poetry of burial is more fully brought out than in any other part of Italy. Indeed, many of the usages and customs in this city are beautiful in the extreme, and, in the case of burial of the dead, often picturesque and touching beyond description. In the case of a young maiden who had early closed her eyes on the loves and sorrows of this world, the ceremony of conveying her to the grave was marked by the poetry and grace so inseparable from all the customs of the sunny land of Italy. The dead girl was conveyed in a gondola through the canals to her last resting place, in some small island necropolis close to the city. In this funeral vessel, the body, sometimes elegantly attired and covered with flowers, reclined on a raised couch beside which her nearest relatives knelt, while a priest sat at the foot of the bier, chanting the service for the dead, in which the bearer of a sacred standard with a cross joined. The solemnity and impressiveness of the mournful cortege could scarcely be surpassed.
Oh,
wow,
that guy is a really good writer. That's just like wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I was just thinking of standing like at the end of some street there in Venice, watching this beautiful, like lit with candles, covered in flowers, just kind of perfect little procession of death kind of just ride on by. And then it's gone.
Oh my gosh. Wow,
So that's kind of, reading that was one of the first things I read when researching this topic, and I thought, I have to tell Katelyn about this.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you read that to me. And I'm glad to hear the whole thing, and I'm glad to be doing this podcast with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad we finally decided to sit down and actually do
it. Yeah. We're cool.
Yep, we're super cool.
I choose as if that would be like the way that we end the podcast. Yeah, we're cool. Click.
Click. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll edit that out.
Leave it.
All right.
People will realize we're not, we're
not
kind of
fakes.
We're not. I'm not a poser, okay? I just like to talk to my friend Sophie, and I like to learn about new things.
I like
respectfully.
Respect my bones.
Well, all right, to all you out there, thanks for listening.
Yeah, and you gotta love these bones.
And respect them.
And respect these bones. All right, we love you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Anything Bones. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Anything Bones Podcast, or email us at anythingbonespodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you to Nick Kruger for our spooky music and Stephen Vetteroff
at Chubby Scrubby on Twitter
for our jazzy vocals, and thank you to Camilla Franklin
at Camilla Strader on Instagram
for our beautiful bony artwork. Please rate, review, and subscribe.
Bones!